Good morning from Recording Studio Oxford, Carl. I'm just reading you Cinderlad, which didn't record properly the first time. That's why these two got uploaded slightly out of order. Hope I hope you like it. There was once upon a time a couple of poor folk who lived in a wretched hut, far from everyone else, in a wood. They only had just managed to live from hand to mouth, and had great difficulty in doing even so much as that. But they had three sons, and the youngest of them was called Cinderlad, for he did nothing else but lie about and poke in the ashes. One day the eldest lad said he would go to earn his living, and he soon got leave to do that, and set out on his way into the world. He walked on and on for the whole day, and when night was beginning to fall he came to a royal palace. The king was standing outside on the steps, and asked where he was going. "Oh, I'm going about seeking a place, my father," said the youth. "Wilt thou serve me and watch my seven foals?" asked the king. "If thou canst watch over them a whole day, and tell me at night what they eat and drink, thou shalt have the princess and half my kingdom. But if thou cannot, I will cut three red stripes on thy back." Next morning, when day was beginning to dawn, the king's master of the horse led out the seven foals, and they ran away, and the youth after them just as it chanced, over hill and dale, through woods and bogs. When the youth had run thus for a long time, he began to be tired, and when he had held on a little longer, he was heartily weary of watching it all. The same moment he came to a cleft in the rock where the old woman was spinning with her distaff in her hand. As soon as she caught sight of the youth, who was running after the foal till the perspiration streamed down the face, she cried, "Come hither, my handsome son, and let me comb your hair for you." The lad was willing enough, so he sat down in the cleft in the rock beside the old hag, and laid his hand on her knees, and she combed his hair all the while he lay there and gave himself up to idleness. When evening was drawing near, the youth wanted to go. "I may as well just go straight home again," said he, "for it is no use to go to the king's palace." "Wait till it's dusk," said the old hag, "then the king's foals will pass by this place again, and you can run home with them. No one will ever know that you have been lying here all day instead of watching the foals." So when they came, she gave the lad a bottle of water and a bit of moss, and she told him to show these to the king, and say, "This is what the seven foals ate and drank." "Hast thou watched faithfully and well the whole day long?" "Yes, that I have," said the youth. "Then you are able to tell me what is the seven foals eat and drink." So the youth produced the bottle of water and the bit of moss which he had got from the old woman, saying, "Here you see their meat, and here you see their drink." Then the king knew how long his watching had been done, and it flew into such a rage that he ordered his people to chase the youth back into home at once. But first they cut three red stripes in his back and rubbed salt into them. When the youth reached home again, anyone can imagine what a state of mind he was in. He had gone out to seek a place, he said, but he never would do such a thing again. Next day the second son said he would now go out into the world to seek his fortune. His mother and father said no, and he bade them look at his brother's back. But the youth would not give up his design, and stuck to it, and after a long, long time he got leave to go, and set forth on his way. When he had walked all day, he too came to the king's palace, and the king was standing outside on the steps, and asked where he was going. And when the youth replied he was going about in search of a place, the king said he might enter his service and watch his seven foals. Then the king promised him the same punishment and the same reward that he promised his brother. The youth at once consented to enter the king's service, for he thought he could easily watch the foals and inform the king of what they ate and drank. In the grey light of dawn the master of horse led out the seven foals, and off they went again over hill and dale, and off went the lad after them. But all went with him as it had gone with his brother. When he had run after the foals for a long, long time, and was hot and tired, he passed by a cleft in the rock where an old woman was spinning with a distaff, and she called to him, come hither, my handsome son, and let me comb your hair." The youth liked the thought of this, let the foals run where they chose, and seated himself in the cleft of the rock by the side of the old hag. So he sat there with his head on her lap, and taking his ease the livelong day. The foals came back in the evening, and then he too got a bit of moss and a bottle of water from the old hag, which things he sought to show the king. But when the king asked the youth, "Canst thou tell me what my seven foals eat and drink?" the youth showed him the bit of moss and the bottle of water, and said, "Yes, here may be all their meat, and here their drink." The king once more became wroth, and commanded that three stripes should be cut on the lad's back, and salt should be strewn on them, and he should be then instantly chased back to his own home. So when the youth got home again, he too related all that happened to him, and he too said he had gone out in search of a place once, but would never do so again. On the third day the Cinderlad wanted to set out. He had a fancy to try to watch the seven foals himself, he said. The other two laughed and mocked him. "Wait, when we all went so with us, do you suppose that you were going to do anything else but lie and poke among the ashes?" that you were going to succeed? You look like succeeding. You who have never done anything else but lie and poke among the ashes, said they. Yes, I will go too, said Cinderlad, for I've taken it into my head. The two brothers laughed at him, and his father and mother begged him not to go, but all to no purpose, and Cinderlad set out on his way. So when he had walked the whole day, he too came to the king's palace, and darkness began to fall. There stood the king outside on the steps, and asked whither he was bound. I'm walking in search of a place, said Cinderlad. From whence do you come, then? Inquired the king, for by this time he wanted to know a little more about the men before he took any of them into his service. So Cinderlad told him whence he came, and he was brother to the two who had watched the 7 foals for the king, and then he inquired if he might be allowed to try watching them on the following day. Oh, shame on them, said the king, for it enraged him even to think of them. If thou art brother to those two, then thou art not good for much. I have had enough of such fellows. Well, as I have come here, you might as well give me leave to make the attempt, said Cinderlad. Well, if thou art absolutely determined to have thy back flayed, thou must have thy own way. If thou wilt, said the king. I would much rather have the princess, said Cinderlad. The next morning, in the grey light of dawn, the master of the horse let out the 7 foals again, and they set off over hill and dale, through woods and bogs, and off went Cinderlad after them. When he had run thus for a long time, he too came to the cleft in the rock. There the old hag was once more spinning from her distaff, and cried to Cinderlad, come hither, my handsome son, and let me comb your hair for you. Come to me then, said Cinderlad, as he passed by jumping and running, and keeping tight hold of one of the foal's tails. When he got safely past the cleft in the rock, the youngest foal said, get on my back, for we have still a long way to go. And thus they journeyed a long, long way. Dost thou see anything now, said the foal. No, said Cinderlad. So they journeyed a good bit further. Dost thou see anything now, asked the foal. No, said the lad. When they had gone thus a long, long way, the foal asked again, dost thou see anything now? Yes, I see something that is white, said Cinderlad. It looks like the trunk of a great thick birch tree. Yes, that is where we're bound to go in, said the foal. When they got to the trunk, the eldest foal broke it down one side, and then they saw a door where the trunk had been standing, and inside this there was a small room, and in the room there was scarcely anything but a small fireplace and a couple of benches, but behind the door hung a great rusty sword and a small pitcher. Canst thou wield that sword? Asked the foal. Cinderlad tried, but he could not do it, so he had to take a draught from the pitcher, and then one more, and after that still another, and then he was able to wield the sword with perfect ease. So they journeyed onward a good bit farther. Good, said the foal. Now thou must take the sword away with thee, and with it thou shalt cut off the heads of all 7 of us on thy wedding day, and then we shall become princes again, as we were before. For we were brothers of the princess, whom thou art to have when thou canst tell the king what we eat and drink. But there is a mighty troll who has cast a spell over us. When thou hast cut off our heads, thou must take the greatest care to lay each head at the tail of the body to which it belonged before, and then the spell which the troll has cast upon us will lose all its power. Cinderlad promised to do this, and then went on further. When they had travelled a long, long way, the foal said, canst thou see anything? No, said Cinderlad. So when they went on a great distance further. And now, inquired the foal, seest thou nothing now? Alas, no, said Cinderlad. So they travelled onward again over many a mile over hill and dale. Now, said the foal, dost thou not see anything now? Yes, said Cinderlad. Now I should see something like a bluish streak far, far away. That is a river, said the foal. There was a long, handsome bridge over the river, and when they got to the other side of it, they travelled again on a long, long way. And then once more the foal inquired if Cinderlad saw anything. Yes, this time he saw something that looked back, far, far away, and was rather like a church tower. Yes, said the foal, we will go into that. When the foals got into the churchyard, they turned into men and looked like the sons of a king, and their clothes were so magnificent that they shone with splendour. And they went into the church and received bread and wine from the priest, who was standing before the altar, and Cinderlad went in too. But when the priest had laid his hands on the princess and read the blessing, they went out of the church again, and Cinderlad went out too, but he took with him a flask of wine and some consecrated bread. No sooner had the 7 princes come out of the churchyard, they became foals again, and Cinderlad got on the back of the youngest, and they returned the way they came, only much, much faster. First they went over the bridge, and then past the trunk of the birch tree, then past the old hag who sat in the cleft of the rock spinning, and they went so fast that Cinderlad could not hear what the old hag screeched after him, but heard just enough to understand she was terribly enraged. It was all but dark when they got back to the king at nightfall, and he himself was standing in the courtyard waiting for them. Hast thou watched well and faithfully the whole day? Said the king to Cinderlad. I have done my best, replied Cinderlad. Then thou canst tell me what my 7 foals eat and drink, asked the king. So Cinderlad pulled out the consecrated bread and the flask of wine, and showed them to the king. You may behold their meat and hear their drink. Yes, diligently and faithfully thou hast watched, said the king, and thou shalt have the princess and half the kingdom. So all was made ready for the wedding, and the king said that it was to be so stately and magnificent that everyone should hear of it, and everybody inquire about it. When they sat down to the marriage feast, the bridegroom rose and went down to the stable, for he said he had forgotten something which he must do. When he got there, he did what the foals had bidden him, and cut the heads of all 7, first the eldest, then the second, and so on, according to their age, and he was extremely careful to lay each at the tail of the foal to which it belonged. And when it was all done, all the foals became princes again. When he returned to the marriage feast with the 7 princes, the king was so joyful that he both kissed Cinderlad and clapped him on the back, and his bride was still more delighted with him than she had been before. Half my kingdom is thine already, said the king, and the other half shall be thine after my death. For my sons can get countries and kingdoms for themselves now that they've become princes again. Therefore, as all may well believe, there was joy and merriment at that wedding. Not really sure what to make of this one, Carl. I'm willing to bet, though, that that the hag that distracted the first 2 brothers was actually the troll that cast the enchantment. Well, yeah. This is the end of number 39, and see you tomorrow for number 40, I hope. And then we close the fairy tales for the moment. Love you to pieces, Carl, as always. Bye-bye.